Hey guys, welcome to CPL Fever. It's your host, JackMurrayTV here, and today we are joined by the General Manager and Head Coach of Cavalry FC, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. So how are you, Tommy?
I'm good. I'd say I'm missing the live action of football. I think it was all over in a bit of a whirlwind, but I'm doing well. All things considered, with the way the world is out there, I'm in a job that I love, getting out of bed in the morning. I'm talking football with you fine gentlemen. You know, things for me are pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, we're great here too. Yeah, but the Island Games did go by so quickly, but it's great to talk soccer with you, and we're just so happy that we get to talk with someone as knowledgeable as football as you.
Well, thank you. That's very flattering. I'm not sure I've got the most amount of knowledge, but I'm sure I'm passionate about how I see things and how I want them to share with them. So whatever you can take from it, there might be a few nuggets in there. It's up to you whether they're chicken or golden.
Yeah. And I do have a little surprise for you, just really quickly. So I really enjoyed watching Cavalry play in the Island Games. I thought that you guys were so fun to watch with so many great players like Ajikube, Elliot Simmons, Dominic Zator, Jordan Brown, Marcus Haber. So I ended up getting this.
Yeah. Well done, Jack. We're your adopted side. That's brilliant. Right home of the mountains. I like that. We take fans one by one, mate. So if we can convert some, that's great.
The sunset in the back is so nice. The red sunset. It is.
Do you know what? It's nice. I drive into Spruce Meadows, and from where I turn, I head west towards the mountain. So I see that skyline. It is legitimate. It's not one of those, like the NHL commercial where, hey, play in Edmonton, and it's not in Edmonton. We get to see that on the drive into work.
Wow, that must be amazing. But our first question for you is, how did you fall in love with soccer?
How did I? It was a slow love affair. I think it became. My dad played, and he was still playing when I was born, and I think a few of his friends. I wasn't really that interested in it per se, till about 7 or 8, and that in England is quite a late bloomer. There's kids who are, as soon as they're walking, they're kicking a ball, and 3 and 4-year-olds run around a ball. That wasn't me, actually. And I think the way my dad had said, he said, listen, he'll find his own journey. If it's through football, great. What he started doing as he was playing was he would then take me in the car and into the locker rooms. And, back there in England, it was the smell of Ralgex, which I guess, what's the equivalent here, where it's kind of like that heat rub. All I remember is smelling that, and Vicks, like the stuff, the nasal rub. Whenever I smell it, it takes me back to that time of watching Dad. And there was one clear comment, what he would say to me is, he said, Tom, he said, if I hear you speak the same language that these players do outside, you'll never come into the locker room with me. He said, so what happens here, he said, is just part of the football. He said, but it's not to be repeated for a kid. And then, I'd take a ball with me, and it'd be ball and wall while Dad was playing, and then other people. And then what it did, it became a lifestyle for me. So I'd always sit on the ball, and you'd always have the tea lady would bring me out, a hot chocolate or something. And then there would be one of the other players that would have sons. We would kick a ball around the side of the pitch, and then suddenly it became my turn. And my dad had enrolled me with my first team, would have been the Cub Scouts. So I'd have been about 8 or 9, and I remember playing for them. And I think I scored on my first game. It was a header off the back of my head and went in. That was me. I was hooked.
So what position did your dad play, and what position did you play during your career?
My dad was a midfielder. He was like a pit bull, box to box type of a footballer. He would big calves on him. He was 5'8". I'm 6 foot. My brother's 6'1". We actually go against the grain, because when we stand with our dad, he's shorter in comparison. So yeah, Dad was a box to box, really good passer of the ball. At 16, 17, I think he signed for Everton on his 18th birthday or around that time. Had a 2-year deal with them. Didn't quite make the first team there, but had other offers to play, and ended up at Torquay, and went into the semi-pro scene because he, back then playing in the lower leagues didn't have a lot of money. So he got into, I think he was an insurance salesman as well as a footballer, and then got into coaching. And then that was the other journey he went through in football. But for me, I grew up playing, I'd always wanted to be a striker, but because I was a thicker set boy back in the old school thinking, and I read the game, right, I went as centre back, and I just, for the most part of my life, I played centre back. I played a little bit of midfield, and now I'm a retired footballer / coach. I play striker anytime I can.
So you take the liberty of getting on the field with the team and say move over, Marcus. I'm gonna take this one.
Well, do you know what? I think that's why I'm a decent coach in comparison to how I was as a player, because I know my limit. So I let Martin Nash and Leon Hapgood, who's my other assistant, they're better players than I was, more attack minded. So when we need to join in, they join in, because I'm a passionate coach. I was a passionate player, and I never want emotions to get in the way of my decisions. So I steer clear a little bit of the players until the off season. And then just recently we've been having the local players, and I've been joining a bit there. And I think it actually surprises them, because I don't join in and training. They actually go, oh, he's not a bad player, actually.
Yeah, it's always fun to see your coaches play with you, because at my soccer academy, my coaches join in, and it's always so fun to play with them.
Yeah, well, you appreciate that they know the game a little bit more. It's everything has to have a context to it. So if they take over the ball too much, it's demoralizing. But if they just do enough to show you, hey, we can play and do this, do that, you see a different side to them too.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask you, what do you miss most from your playing days, and what do you miss least?
I think there is always that difference of playing. There's this adrenaline rush you get of preparing for games. You're focusing on the games, that nervous energy that's around, that buzz when you score or make a block or make a key pass. That you don't replicate. I think when you coach, the highs are higher because you've been the collective sum of all the parts that have been put together, and the lows are lower. You feel every player's error. You feel adjustments, substitutions. You feel all of that. But if it's you as a player, you've had a bad game and the other 10 guys pulled me out of it. But as a coach, if the team's had a bad game, you take, as much as it is the players that are making the decisions, you take the ownership on that. I miss the locker room. As a player, it's a bit different than as a coach. You've got to know your distances. When we train, the players' locker room is theirs. Me nor the coaching staff, we just make it a rule. We don't go in there. It's not up for us. The games, we've got our coaches' room, and then we come in and talk to them about tactics, but let it be theirs. But the locker room banter, I tell the players and remind them, you won't get anything like it in your life. So enjoy it. And that's probably one of the big things I miss, the laugh and the banter.
Yeah, that sounds like a great part of like playing soccer, the laugh and the banter and just like being in the dressing room. But you said you talked about tactics a bit. So now this isn't like this question doesn't have to be a tactic that you use, but what is your favorite like tactic to talk about?
Do you know what? I would say it's probably formation, and I call it nuances. Mm-hmm. So whenever we're looking at a team, I always like to analyze the opposition, and I look at what they've got, what we've got, and then all you're trying to do is it's a chess match. So, okay, if they're playing out like this, what do we need to do to prevent it? When they play out like this, they're expansive. How can we capitalize it? How can our movements and interchanges drag the opposition into a place they're unfamiliar with or don't do consistently? Because when they don't do things consistently, that's when you got more chance of forcing errors, creating gaps, because they're doing things out of the ordinary. So for me, it's always been about what are the strengths and weaknesses of the opposition, and how do we counteract that with exposing our strengths and nullifying theirs. I think, I've got in the background now, Burnley and Tottenham are on, and I'm always looking now to see, well, what's Jose Mourinho doing against Sean Dyche? Because Sean Dyche is tough 4-4-2 and makes things tough for them. He's direct, gets balls into high percentage areas. Whereas now Jose Mourinho's probably got, even since his Real Madrid days, he's got more attacking threats. So he's going to hit more on the counter, with Kane and Son and Bergwijn. It's forever how it all fits together. That's what I like.
Yeah, the 4-4-2 is, I think, one of the strongest formations. It's just like so strong, and you have to have like a good gelling with your team to be able to do it like really well. And Atletico Madrid and Burnley are great examples of it.
Yeah, it is. There's clarity in it, I think, because it went to, people would find it as an old school, right? Four lines of defense, 4 lines in midfield, and 2 strikers. Here's your job. It was easy that when you defended, you were in 2 banks of 4, and then the strikers would close down. Everything was easy. I think what you're seeing now, Southampton play it really, really well, and they did against my team Everton on the weekend. But what Hassan Talo does very well is he's a high press with it. So, whereas Atletico Madrid are a low block and you've got to beat them, and he wants them to come on and do it. There's different nuances to play in it. I think it's one that if you've just got a team together, it's one of the easiest ones to get instant results. But I quite like formations that there's a bit of complexity to it. For example, we started off in a 3-4-3 at the Island Games, but our actual defensive shape was more a 4-4-1-1 because we slid. But that takes a bit of time, because the easiest solution to a 3-4-3 could actually drop your wing backs into a 5-4-1, and then everybody's in straight lines. But I don't think the game's straight lines. I think there's a lot of vertical movement as well, horizontal movement. And you've just got to find what works for the players you have.
So I was wondering about the 3 at the back, because you've kind of brought that, done that, and it's kind of not, there's not a whole bunch of teams that do that.
No.
And I'm wondering if part of what you want to do is because you have those strong, midfielders at the base, like let's say Simmons, Adekube, very good penetrative passers. Is that because you want to kind of get things wide, have them kind of stretched, and then have those guys have space? Because
it became a needs-must thing, actually, and it became that ideally we were going to play a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. That's probably our favoured one. But when Richard Luca and Jose Escalante didn't get into the country, and then we had Jair Cordova and Jose Hernandez, 2 more attackers. Now we're like, okay, what do we have? We have 2 centre forwards, Jordan Brown and Marcus Haber. Okay, he can play as one of the target striker. Then we had 2 of the best number 10s in my mind. You look at Sergio Camargo and Oliver Minatel, both different types of 10s. Both are arguably more second strikers, if you will. And they'd scored 8 goals apiece in all competitions last year. So we said, well, let's put them in the pockets. We've got wide players like Nico Pasquotti, Farsi, Nathan Mavilla that give us balance. So we said, right, that's what we do have. And we have centre-backs. We had 4 really good centre-backs with Boskovic on loan and Trafford, 2 lefties, Zator and Wheeldon, 2 righties. So we said, well, if we had a back 3, we usually build out in a 3 because most people will put like either a single striker, so you've got gaps either side, or they'll put, 1-on-1, or they'll play 3, which means that we'll create overloads on the outside. So it made it easier for us in our head that we started with our strengths. And that's why I said to you in one of the interviews, we became a tailor. So when Martin and Ash and myself, well, let's get our best players on the pitch. And then Sergio Camargo goes down like, oh, crap. So then we moved Nico Pasquotti into one of the front 3, but he's better in an outside flank. But he did okay. And then Oliver Minatel goes down, and suddenly now we had to just keep changing our identity somewhat. Sorry, our tactical identity, but not our playing identity, based on the players we had.
I love hearing you talk all about like all the players and all the tactics. I find it so interesting.
Yeah, do you know what? Do you watch any of those documentaries? Like, so you get Jose Mourinho talking, and then before that Pep Guardiola, and it is. And I was always the same, and probably back to when I'd be around my dad and watching him coach. And at first, I'm probably not paying attention because I'm kicking the ball against the wall, but a lot of it would have been coming through. And then when we would go to games, he's like, look at that player, look at him, look how he drops into that position. And then you start to understand why tactics are important, because you want to You want to draw players out of position. You want to create overloads on one side and then switch to the open space. So, yeah.
So it was really helpful, just kind of learning from your dad, because he would be explaining all that, like, because he was just so passionate about it himself, right?
Yeah,
Or his viewpoint.
Yeah, he got me to start coaching earlier. So I was about 15 or 16, started then coaching with him when he was, the Swindon Town academy manager. So he would then have me start doing the technical warm-ups, like, hey, ball each lads, or, doing the physical, what's known now as a sports science warm-up. We would have done the old school, up at the back, jogging in your twos, bit of fun and reaction games. And then he would have me with the ball, go and teach them a couple of things. And then when I do it, he said, well, think of how long do you want to do it for? Do you want to go a full minute, or would they do a full minute in a game? So started to give me a why behind what I do. So there was a structure into it, and didn't always give me the answers, but would give me questions to solve.
And you were 15 when you started doing that?
Started training, yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think I got my first coaching license. I'd have been 17. I got my what was known as the UEFA C, it would be the CSAC at 17.
That's pretty young to get a C license, right?
I think so. It was good because I was part of what's known now as the youth teams. Most professional clubs have them, where in England we were able to leave school at 16 and do what would be the equivalent of your grades 11 and 12. We could do in a college format at a different location, or in a sixth form as part of it. So what we did was we went full time. So our job was great because I become a part of this youth team. We're full time. We'd get £50 a week as an apprenticeship money. We would have 2 of the first team players that we would make sure their kit was rolled out. So we'd have a kit woman, a laundry woman. We would go and get the kit. We would put, 2, if I had 2 players, I'd get number 14, Ian Culverhouse, and number 24, Peter Holcroft. I still remember their names. I would make sure that their boots were clean for the day ahead. And then when they came in for training, they'd throw their kit in the laundry. We'd just dump it at the laundry woman, but we'd have to clean the boots, leave them there, and then do our own boots. When the first team was on the training pitch, we would then, half an hour later, we could start our practice. And from time to time, if we were doing well, the manager from the first team would drag over and say, right, we need a centre-back, over you go, or you need another winger, over you go. So it was a great way to ease into professional football. And that was my apprenticeship. So at 16, I was full-time in the game. And while we were there through the college program, we got to study for our coaching licensing. So it got me on that path and started my coaching journey.
So what made you want to be a coach? Was it just that you wanted to be like participating in the game as early as possible, or did you already know at that point that you kind of saw things that maybe other players didn't see, or it was just kind of the opportunity was there?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was a couple of layers. One, it was something to do. First and foremost, I wanted to be a player. Now as an apprenticeship, you get into that one where, I'm going to be a player. And then you start getting involved with, there's a players union called the Professional Footballers Association. And during that time, we paid something like £10 a year annual subscription. Whereas the first team players on professional contracts would have paid 10% of their salaries, their annual salaries. And what this PFA does now is it's really good that they end up using a percentage of this for players that leave the game. And now players that leave the game, I got my education paid for to go to university. So at the end of my youth scholarship with Swindon Town, they didn't give me a full-time professional contract. I was told I wasn't big enough to be a centre-back at League One Championship level. So they said, look, and I went to Torquay for a brief time. I went to Yeovil for a brief time. I went into semi-pro, and my parents just sat me down and said, listen, you're a good footballer. You're not a great one. Build on what you're doing. So you have a choice now. You can still chase the dream and train your backside off. You can go and work in a factory at Honda where your uncle's working and earn a very good living. Or you could build to have a life in the game, building on your coaching. And then the PFA actually brought out, I was the first class of its kind where we did a sports science and coaching degree. So at the age of 19, I went to Roehampton Institute of the University of Surrey and did a degree in business in sports science and coaching. So then that layered And then after that, then I did my UEFA B, and then after that, always built from it. But without the PFA and without my parents' advice, I may not have followed this path. I was given a support system that supported a career in the game.
And now, in addition to coaching, you also are very active in scouting for players, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what do you look for in young players?
Something that was said to me early on, enthusiasm and desire. I think it's easy. Talent does catch your eye because you go, oof, look at that, and always tell players when they come to open trials, do something really good, something different. Whether it's a dribble and a drive in the attacking end, whether it's a come through and win a powerful, put your name on it and win a powerful header as a defender, block a shot, keeper, roll the ball out and hit a clean strike to the winger. Do something that catches the eye, then back it up and then keep enforcing it. And if you do something wrong, simplify. So just go 3 passes, next 3 passes, I'm going to go into you, Jack, into you, Andy, and then into the striker. And now I can then try something amazing. But talent will always catch the eye. But from there, how enthusiastic are they? Yes, drop. You can see it in the way they talk when they defend. Or if they lose the ball, do they hunt them down quickly on a reaction? When their opponent or teammate has the ball, do they overlap? Do they make a forward? You can see, you can feel people's enthusiasm. And I think if I see that, and I tell you, Mohamed Farsi, when I seen his video and when I watched him and spoke to him, I could feel it. And that then pushed us to a place of, let's give this lad a chance.
So yeah, it's also about the by enthusiasm, are you also kind of hinting about like attitude, like if the player has the right attitude?
Ability and attitude. I think you have to have both, because you can have A+ ability and a C+ attitude, and you will not make it. There's many players that we've all seen that haven't quite capitalized on their ability, whereas there's players with an A+ ability and maybe a B+, A+ attitude and a B+ ability, and they've been able to get as high as they can because of their attitude. And Nick Ledgerwood would be a great example of that. I remember seeing his enthusiasm and desire as a 16, 17-year-old, as a young pro, when I played for the Calgary Storm. And I'm like, who's this kid? And you wouldn't have looked at him. This is no disrespect to Nick and gone, oh, he's a technician. He's one that's going to be bending things top corner. He affects games with his tactical savvy, his enthusiasm and desire, his decision making, and they're all intangible skills. But that's a player that's played professional football for God knows how long now. Almost 15, 16 years, 50 times for the national team, because he's reliable and he's got an A+ attitude.
Yeah, Nicholas Ledgerwood is a great player, and like you said, he has a great attitude. So
you wanted to say something about Farsi?
I was gonna say that Farsi was also a great pickup for you guys. He was like the player of the tournament. Yeah,
he he caught the eye with his videos. We get agents that will text, we'll get WhatsApp messages, we'll get emails, people that we know, people we don't know. So we're inundated with options. So it's not something we're ever short on. I spent the weekend, even though I was at home, this job never ends. So I'll be at home and I'll have the games on in the morning. My wife will come down for a coffee. I've been up since 5:30 watching Premier League, and I'll have my laptop open and the game on. And my wife knows exactly what I'm doing. I'm looking at players and I'm looking at the game. So I'm looking at trends in the game, and then I'm looking at players that I've been sent, because that's the quiet time I have where my office door's not being knocked, or I don't have any other appointments, and I'm forever looking at it. And what I do is, once I've watched enough of their players, I have a quite simple recruitment strategy that I developed with our coaching staff, and it was very simple. What's their ability like? Does it catch the eye? Do they pass the eye test? And if they pass the eye test, what does the data tell us? Where have they played? What's their resume? Have they got 20 X clubs, or do they have a few? Have they come through a professional academy? How many league games in what country have they played? How do their InScout, Y-Scout, whatever the scouting software that we have access to, what does their data show on there? And then once it's done that and we go, right, we really like this player, I want an introduction, and it'll be this. It's almost like doing what your job is, where I just ask them, how did you fall in love with the game? Who's been the best player to play for? What's your favorite formation? What do you do outside of the game? And just get to know them. And once I do that, they pass the personality test. That's it for me. And any player that comes in, and there's been several that we haven't taken that have gone straight to, well, how much is it to play in that league? As soon as they start talking money, they're not here, because this league isn't going to make anybody rich right now. It's a startup league. But what it will give them is it'll give them a chance. It'll give them an opportunity. So if they talk about opportunity, then they're for me.
So you have a lot of psychology in there too, in the job.
Yeah,
managing different personalities on the team as well. I mean, it must be you must have to master a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, your recruitment strategy sounds so good, and like how you do things and how you like ask some questions about how you fall in love with soccer. And I don't think I've heard a recruitment strategy quite like that. I think I've heard similar, but not like that. So I really like it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we're people, and I think we can't get away from that. It doesn't matter what it is, and no matter which player has played for me, whether they've played every single minute possible, like a Dominic Zator, or they've played on the peripheral. The strength of the teams that I want to be a part on is how you treat the player that's playing all the time and the player that's not playing at all. So I think it's important that they know they're human, they know that they're valued, and it's really down to a performance or a tactical or a technical thing why they're not in a team. And it's not about who they are as a person, because it's detrimental. I think when these young players live on 1-year contracts, that can't be the definition of who they are. It has to be who they are as a human being and what they have as a value. So that's really, really big in the type of people we try to bring into the Cavalry. So we can look at, the Island games and, oh, you know what? We were 1 game, 1 goal away from being in the final again. Or we can look at it and say, actually, we probably punched above our weight because of the adversity we faced. And I think it's more the latter. We were able to keep performing no matter what was thrown at us, because we had just a great group of guys that were really versatile and adapted.
That game against Halifax, when you kind of I don't want to say out tactician, but pretty much out tactitioned what I guess Halifax was ready for, and then it looks like Bobby kind of took that into his playbook for the well.
Yeah, it did, and I mean, fair play to him. I think that was something. I mean, you always need a little bit of luck. I'd be wrong in saying even our biggest wins, in our first year, we won a lot of 1-goal games because we had it on our side. Good teams create that luck. I think Forge did it again this year, and fair play to Harty. I think he created his own luck this year with some nice pieces. I think that game against Halifax, it went against us, but we played to the end. And no matter what's thrown at you, whether it's an early goal or early sending offs, 2 goals before half time, we really could have folded the tent. And we chose to make a game of it and leave everything out there. And it could have been at the detriment of energy levels for the next game. But we chose that was the way we were going to play the tournament, and we didn't quit. If we'd have lost 5, 6, 7-0, which it could have been, that would have been a greater suffering than losing a 2-1 game knowing that you played really well.
Yeah, and like Cavalry has so much depth, and even if one player goes out, or like Jose Escalante can't get into the country, you have these players that can step into that role and the team performs so great even without some like key players playing all the time with injuries and stuff. But I know that you're a big Everton fan. So Everton has only lost once this season and are at the top of the table. They're performing amazingly. I think so far they've been performing better than Liverpool. So why do you think they've been so good this year? Is it because of their new players, like because Carlo Ancelotti brought in like these great players like James Rodriguez, Doucouré, and Allen? Because I know Doucouré and Allen have been and Andre Gomez have been working really well in that midfield. And like James isn't really much of a right winger, but he's coming in and like being very dynamic and getting balls to players like Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin.
I think the difference with Everton this year is they've got X factor. So that all started with the owner looking at who his previous coach was in Marco Silva, that he was, he's okay. You know, he was trying to be that. Before that, it was Ronald Koeman. You know, before that, it was, Sam Allardyce, Ronald Koeman we had. And then before that, Roberto Martinez. We'd always had these kind of, there was something about these coaches that were good. None of them had an X factor of Carlo Ancelotti. You know, you put Jose Mourinho in that. He's got that X factor. You put Jurgen Klopp. You put Simeone. There's something about a team with their coach that has an X factor. So first and foremost, when you have that, when you pick up the phone to James Rodriguez, his agent, and say, "I came here because, and here's what we're looking to do." You have a good core of players like Richarlison and Keane and Calvert-Lewin. You know, I'd even put Luca Digne. You know, he haven't watched Everton. These are quality players. But then he brought in X factor. So he said, right, I know for us to go next, I need James Rodriguez. We need, and I read it somewhere, it was almost like when Man City had their first early money and they signed Robinho, and he was this world-class Brazilian, and everyone went, that was a signing of intent. James Rodriguez was exactly that for Everton. So then when you added Alan would then do the grunt work that perhaps James wouldn't. So there became balance. And then now suddenly Calvert-Lewin is getting more service because he's got Richarlison on one side, James Rodriguez on the other. Now you've also got your fullbacks in Coleman and Digne that are going forward because they know they've got Alan, who's a brick in front of them. Now suddenly you're getting Michael Keane's playing well. He's coming to because he feels more confident. And when there is something, back to that point of psychology, X Factor gives you that. You know, and I've seen that when we had, I guess, Dominic Malonga in year one and Julian Boucher. These guys came in and they had that little bit of, you know, Jose Escalante, they had that little bit of panache about them that said, yeah, you know what, we'll put on a show. And it makes it. Richard Luca would have been that for us this year. I'm confident. Mo Farsi became it. But it suddenly then gives you and the players a confidence that we can win this game. We're going to win this game. Even if you go a goal behind, you're like, we've got the quality that will win the game.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it does make a lot of sense with that X factor and Carlo Ancelotti being able to switch around his tactics and knowing so much about tactics. Everton really does have that X factor this year that's allowed them to go on to the top and keep performing so well. Do you think they'll make it into a Champions League spot?
I think they have a great chance, yeah. And only reason being is I don't think Carlo Ancelotti is getting overawed with, you know, chasing it. He's been there. He's won it 3 times, has he? With you know, both Real Madrid and AC Milan. I think he's somebody that's won titles. He knows what it takes. He's about the process of getting there, of performing, about the next game. So you're not going, right, it's about the destination. It's about, actually, you know what, we got Newcastle United next week. We've got to show a response from here. And he's another one. I think we talked early on in our conversation about when he went to Everton, he went, well, here's what I've got right now. So he actually made Everton a 4-4-2 to start with. Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin played off of each other. You know, he had Sigurdsson and Gomez in the middle. Then he had a couple of wide wingers that did the work. And all he was trying to do was, this is what I've got. So this is how I'm going to play this game. This year now, he's almost gone into that 4-3-3 or 4-1-4-1 in defence. But it's now allowed James Rodriguez to pick up these half spaces by coming inside onto his left foot. And he's got Coleman that takes the outside lane. So Carlo Ancelotti evolves his teams very much on what he has in front of him. And he's a coach that I take incredible note of. I'm just delighted he's finally coaching for my team.
Yeah, they're doing well this year. They look good.
Yeah.
They look good. Which must be exciting because they were kind of just mid-table for the last few years, right?
for most of my life, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like the nickname the Toffees? Because I read about Everton and I read about how they got the nickname the Toffees, and I really like the nickname. Do you like the nickname?
I do. I've got a sweet tooth, Jack. So anything around candy, yeah, I'm all in on it. Yeah, it is good, and it is a good tradition. And I think that's why, you look at the English leagues. It's born out of a tradition, isn't it? West Ham are the Hammers, but it's born out of the steel environment they were in. For us, being the toffees and having the toffee lady go round pre-games and giving out those Everton mints, it just becomes a great story.
All right, so I have a question back to you as like a coach. Back to you as a coach. So let's say you're on the touch line on the left side, and you got to get word over to the right back or something. Are you shouting? Do you kind of pass that through someone like Nick Ledger would? Like how do you get that information? Like say something happens in a game, like you get a red card, guy comes off in the 12th minute, 15th minute, whatever it is, and you got to kind of change a whole bunch of stuff up. How do you get that information out there?
Do you know what? As much as coaches like to feel that we've got a lot to do on game day, reality is we don't. I think what it has to come down to is the habits you've installed in your build up to that week, in the culture that you've created through your preseason, on your playing identity, and how you've prepared them with the video analyst. And also, if this happens, default to that. And then it's about your spine, your leaders in the team. So it's your Marco Carducci's to your Mason Trafford or Jay Wheeldon to your Nick Ledgerwood in midfield, or your Marcus Haber or Dominic Malonga, as we had. They're your experienced players that can actually say, hey, Nate, tuck in on that side. He's taking on the outside, or they have to be able to manage it. If it's happened 2 or 3 times, I might send a reminder, or at a throw in closest to me and a pause a game, I might send a reminder. Or if there's say an injury and you send your athletic therapist on, and tell Leds to tell Nico Pasquotti he needs to tuck in or attack the back post when it's on our left hand side, 1 or 2, or because reality is when the crowd's in, you can't affect the other side at all. Honestly, it's and I remember being out BC Place playing against the Whitecaps, and there was a buzz in it, and it's so vast anyway. We couldn't affect it. Montreal Impact was the same. Even going to Halifax when it's busy, players can get caught up in the emotion of the game. So you just have to. It's the Chinese whisper. Can you get the simple information that are based on the habits that you've worked on to that player in question? Okay,
that's interesting. At the Island Games, was it any easier because there was no crowd, like so they could actually hear you?
And unfortunately, probably too many choice words were heard on the microphone as well. That involved a lot of F-bombs and things that my dad would have told me don't repeat.
Yeah, that's just in the locker room. Yeah. No one else hears that.
Yeah.
And another question that I have for you is, do you like the 5 sub rule?
For that tournament, yes. For moving forward, no. I think what we've got to be careful of is it doesn't then become a transitional game like hockey, where it's roll on, roll off subs almost, and you put half your front unit in, and suddenly now it's about speed and not nous. And I think we've got to make sure that we have players that can manage fatigue, that know when to speed the game up and slow the game down. If we sped the game up, we would be creating more players with say pace. So you look at your Akeem Garcias, he's got skill too. Mm-hmm. You look at Nico Pasquotti, you look at say Ryan Telfer, they got pace and power, got some skill too. But then you want to see that is there players like Tristan Borges, Marco Bustos, Sergio Camargos that can get on the half turn, Elijah Adekubis that get on the ball, slow it down, and then speed it up. You've got to create players. Otherwise, 5 subs, it'll become more of a track meet. And I think that's detrimental to the other parts of the game.
Oh, I was just going to say that, I like the 5 subs rule for this tournament, but going forward, I would like to see it go back to 3 subs.
Yeah, so that kind of leads into, fatigue. I mean, obviously, if you play video game like FIFA, you can see like the fatigue, the colored bar. It's like, okay, those are players to change. I mean, It's obviously a lot more complex when you have players that are slowing the game down, speeding it up. How do you tell who's getting fatigued? Because let's face it, playing full on for 90 minutes it's got to be the most physically demanding game, period.
And at the Island Games, we noted that we played 10 games in about under 30 days. So we end up playing almost like 2.5 to 3 day turnarounds. And when you haven't played, which listen, doctors and nurses are working 24, 48 hours straight. So there's no real complaints about playing a 90-minute game. But if you want quality, it's sharpness, fitness, fatigue. Fatigue leads to injury. Fatigue can dull the quality of a game. But also what you want to do is make sure that you manage the ball. So there's 2 ways we look at it. We've got our GPS monitors that track, our performance, our sprint output, our ground coverage. So our sports scientists will kind of keep us on track with, well, do you know what? We're getting to a point where we should look to bring him off because, it could now start risking an injury. And then the other side is the eye test where you'll look at and go, he's not getting forward anymore from a fullback position, or midfielders, then they're not tracking their runners now, so they're like passing them on instead of doing it. So they would be 2 of the indicators that we would go by.
Okay. And how has the game changed in the last 10 years? I mean, is it becoming a little bit more athletic, or what would you say? How's the game changed?
2 things for me. It's fitter, it's faster. So it's distances covered, repeated sprint abilities seem to be more and more, and the players, now the last 10 to 15 years, there's less of them that will go out and have a pizza every other night or go for a few beers after the game. These players now are very strict on their diets. There's a lot more in sports science in their stretching, their pre-habilitations, their cool downs, their diets, nutrition. I think that's improved. I also think there's less and less secrets because teams now can watch you. They can look at everything you're doing when you're building out the game, when you're defending the game, the tendencies. It's only time now that people are looking at. I think they've been the 2 big improvements. The game's still a game. So if you choose to play a 4-4-2 or a 3-4-3 or a hybrid of both, I think they're just nuances in the modern day game. I think there's players now that could, you're seeing a lot more midfielders, if you're playing with a back 2, drop into the 3 either side to build out in the 3 and then move up. You're seeing a lot more, Pep called it the false 9 with Messi. You're seeing that at Liverpool now where Firmino is not really a target man out and out. They play with 3 strikers and 3 midfielders. There's a bit more versatility in roles. I don't think roles are, you are this and that's all you do. They have to be a bit fluent and flexible.
Yes. And another question that I had for you is the depth of the number 10. So a lot of players that used to be pure number 10s have kind of been more center mids lately. Would you say that that's because of defensive improvements in the game? Because I know that if you can use a center attacking mid right, they can still be one of the most important players on the field. Like JackMurray for the Wanderers, he made all the difference in them to unlock defenses, getting balls to Hakeem Garcia, and maybe York 9 could have used someone like that, and who you have in Sergio Camargo. So why do you think that that there's kind of less number 10s now?
I think what you're seeing now, the 10s are drifting into more the James Rodriguez coming in from the outside. I think Hamadou Carr did it very well with Bustos. Bustos was, inverted brackets, a number 10, or that's probably what he would have said. It depends. If you're still playing a 4-2-3-1, you essentially have a number 10. If you're playing a 4-4-2, one of those strikers might be more of a show into feet and the other one more of a target man. I think what you're doing now is we see the game essentially in 5 channels. So if you look at the 18-yard box, the 2 outside channels are there, and then you divide the 18-yard box into left, center, and right. Now you've got 5 channels. So when you're creating your attacking organization, essentially you want a player in all 5 channels to maximize the width of the pitch. If you have more than 2 in any of those channels, then suddenly you're off balance, and then you can be countered. So it really makes for, where do you want to create? And when you look at that 5 channel spread inside the 18, that's where you want your goal action. So they call it now the half space. And if you look at what David Villa did for Man City, he became the king of the half space. You know, Messi walks a lot and picks up balls in these half spaces, because who goes in there? Does a centre back step in and leave a gap for the centre forward or winger to exploit? Does the midfielder get pulled across? And if they get pulled across, now you've got the open side to overload. It's all about the utilization of these half spaces. So why the number 10? I wouldn't say they're going out their game. I think they're evolving into a starting position wider, so they can drift into versus stand there and be marked. So I think they're evolving into, and you look at Bustos's goals in those positions, you look at, you know, so some of the things Sergio Camargo did well for us. I still think there's a position for them, but then they've got to have the right players around them. So for Everton's case, you've now got Seamus Coleman that likes to get up and down the line. If he was a stay-at-home defender, that wouldn't give James Rodriguez that half space that a 10 needs.
And would you say that, yeah, that's interesting. And would you say that that there's more defensive responsibility on all the players, whereas back, 15 years ago, there'd be some players that, wouldn't, I mean, Messi aside, but, is there more responsibility for all players, even those highly skilled attacking players, to kind of track back?
Yeah, definitely. I think now you're seeing that a multi-directional player. I think that's the probably, again, the other evolution to add to the previous question, is you're seeing players that have to be good both ways. And by that, I mean, you have a formation now. So let's call it the 3-4-3. You have a formation that you play in your start and build out, but essentially that will become a 2-3-5 in the attacking half. But from there, you've got to have a counter press that you've got to win it back within 6 seconds. Otherwise, you're in transition and then you're going into your low block or being countered and scored on. So the players now know that when we lose it, we're either going right to the ball or right to a marker on the pitch, that it might be the top of the inside centre circle, that's their starting line. So they know that you've got to train them. And I think all players now realise that they have to know a defensive side as well as the attacking.
Yes, definitely. And I remember you saying in one of the press conferences about the 6-second rule and how you have to get it back in 6 seconds, or you have to transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we work a lot on it in training. So a lot of the stuff you've seen, why we're able to change and mess around with a lot of formations, is because we didn't change our habits. In talking with the players, talking with the coaching staff, Martin, Nash and myself, said okay, let's talk to our leadership group, which is, Nick Ledgerwood, Mason Trafford, Elijah Adekubi. So we'd talk to them and say, look, we're going into this game now. Against, it was what were some of the key games. So York 9, we had to play to win. Mm-hmm. We couldn't say, look, let's go and draw, because there was different outcomes. We said we want to be in control. Okay, if we want to be in control, how do we want to, bounce back from a couple of defeats? We have to give everything. Okay, so do we want to go all out in our pressing? Okay, great. Here's how it looks. Then Pacific, they'd beaten us previously. Right. Mm-hmm. Are we going to risk it again and play in a back 3 versus their front 3? That's where they exposed us. They switched the play on us. It was risky to play again. But we agreed that they caught us on a day where we were a little bit sluggish. So we said, right, in order to stop the ball getting to Blasco and Bustos, we have to stop it at the source. So when we agree upon these habits, the players have buy-in. We as staff can look at it, and then we try and make these decisions every 15 minutes. Is it working? Do we keep going? Okay, there's a water break coming up. Let's adjust it. Half time. Let's go back to it. So you have all these moments to alter it, but essentially it all comes down to the habits that we installed in training, like the 6-second rule. So in training, if we have a drill, boom, you've got to win in 6 seconds, or stop them making 3 passes, and then or they win a point. Every single session, we have something in a regain or a press or a retention and that helps us play any formation we want, really.
Yeah, one of the things that you also mentioned in a press conference that I was curious about, and I didn't get a chance to follow up on it. You said there were 5 parts of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So what are those 5 parts? I'd love to see how you kind of
How I
envision the game.
dissect it down. Yeah. I think it's really, you've got to look at what your attacking organization is. So if the keeper has it, how do we want to build out? And that can almost be 1A and 1B, attacking organization, and then and your attacking breakdown of the opposition in their half. But you look at your attacking principles first, your defensive principles second, which again can be A and B, where it's how do we defend in their end, how do we defend in our end. Once you've looked at that, you've got your transition. So your attacking transition. So regain, how do we break out? When we lose it, how do we defensive transition? So that's now four components of the game. And the 5th is set plays, which again, you could really actually call it A and B, where it's defensive set plays and attacking set plays. But really, every single team that I've been involved with, we have an identity in how we in possession. We have an identity without possession. We have an identity at the turn of possession, both sides. And we have an identity in trying to create some magic in our set plays or organization without them.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I have another question about about the midfield. So Simmons and Ajikube were great at those like penetrative passes. So how did you instruct them in the island games and like to make those penetrative passes?
We worked a little bit when you do blocked practices, which we had to because it was non-contact. We had a few different passing patterns that we rehearsed, so it just becomes like a dance recital where you're going over and over. I go like this happens, that happens. He goes there, you go there. It all sounds great until you put an opposition in the way. So then now they have to read and react. So the flaws for all coaches, all teams, all players is we really only had about 10 to 12 days of contact training where we played a few inter-squads to get it. Usually I always think players take 4 or 5 games to find a bit of a groove. We didn't have that. So I guess by the time we'd played Pacific or Ottawa in the first round, you're starting to get through these games where players are like, okay, now I can cope with a bit of chaos. What we saw in Elliot Simmons and why we signed him, he had a good range of passing. We call it the round the corner pass. So if I'm getting a ball off a centre back and I'm getting closed down this side, can you take it with the inside or outside your foot to go around the corner and break a line into there? And Elliot has that. So we encouraged him to do it a lot and often and showed him in video moments when he did it, moments when he could do it. Elliot Adekubi, one of the things we've been working on with him in the off season is he's got really, really high possession stats. We said, how many of those are lateral, how many of them are backwards, and how many of them actually pierce layers, we call it. So, if teams are playing in a 4-4-2, can we break the first line of the attackers? If we get into the midfield line, can he break the midfield line into the attacking line? And what he then looked to do was we would encourage him, in training and in video, here's what he does. And then it was on him. I got to give the guys credit. They're the ones that have to be out there and it's on their decision making. What was really neat was as the tournament developed, those two started to get a bit of a rhythm together. And, the season was too short, but I think had that been a 28-game season, you'd have seen even more exciting play from the pair of them.
Yeah, I'd love to see them together in next season. It would be it'd be a duo that I definitely want to watch. And yes, Ajikube was good at making those passes up. And Elliot Simmons was, I've seen him play too. And he's great at turning around the corner and just playing into and playing in that pass. He was one of my favorite players to watch. So I got him here.
Yes. And you know what? He's a terrific human being. So back to that character test, when we had the video, when I had a call with him, and I'd spoken to Artie with him, and they were going in a different direction. And one of the things Artie said, he says he's a great kid. He said he's a good player, great kid. And I found exactly that. And I honestly think he can go even better. If he starts finding that little bit of a edge to his game, which, you know, he started adding a few more fouls as well as a few more aerial challenges. He's now added the other side, the dark arts of it, that say a Steven Gerrard would, or a Tony Cruz has in his game. They have an edge to them, you know, is they're able to pinch the ball off opposition.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll get into the rapid fire, which is really quick. So in an article I read that you said we are entering a golden era of Canadian soccer. And personally, I think we're in that golden era right now with Alphonso Davies playing in Bayern Munich, Jonathan David playing at Lille, and us recently being the US, and the women's team has been outstanding for years with Sinclair and Khadijah Buchanan recently winning the UCL. So how far do you think Canadian soccer has come in the last 10 years?
Massive. I mean, I came here 18 years ago to play for the Calgary Storm, and it was only 2 flitting seasons, and blink and it was gone. And I think really you got to give credit to the Whitecaps and Impact and Montreal that, you know, kept that Canadian club mentality going. So supporters and players were coming through it, you know, and then Edmonton and Ottawa, you know, started doing their thing, and then it encouraged everyone else. Now leagues are cropping up. So League One Ontario, PLSQ, you know, I was part of the American leagues with the USL and USL PDL. I think there's room to create another development league, a bit like the WHL is for hockey, to the NHL. So, but anyway, what I feel now is we're populating a deeper playing chart. So when I saw the Gold Cup and the World Cup qualifiers and Olympics, all on the men's side, all may fall in this calendar. You know, I think it was someone like Oliver Platt that put out 3 potential lineups, and it was littered with players. And within the last 5 years ago, you'd have seen unattached FC on those rosters. Do you remember that used to be a bit of a standing joke? Now I'm looking on these lists going, hang on a minute, you've missed this player, you've missed that player, you've missed this one. Now we feel like we're a country that has a bit of depth, that will continue to grow. My only thing now is we mustn't let time go past without creating a women's side, because if once Christine Sinclair retires and say Khadijah Buchanan are the ones playing in Europe, what's the next wave? Where are they playing? Because if we're expecting them to come straight out to college into the national team, they're missing an integral part. So we've got to find that sweet spot where we're supporting the women's game to make sure that they're still able to compete for podiums, as well as the men's compete for World Cups and podiums.
Yeah, and is that lava beads on your wrist? Just curious.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, we just got ours recently, and we've really been enjoying them. I have one that's a sacred arrow and howlite. Okay. So white, and then the lava beads here, and then golden arrows right here, and then the lava beads. And just one last question, then I'll move into the rapid fire. The rapid fire is really quick. So I love talking about transfers and scouting. I think it's a very interesting topic to talk about. And Cavalry one of Cavalry's players, Ariban Pebble, has been going on trials with some big clubs in Europe of the Premier League, like Sheffield United and Leicester City. So is there an update on him, or how is he doing?
What's good about Arabim, he has time on his side, and he has talent that catches the eye. So they're 2 things, and I guess you'd say as a EU passport, right? That always helps.
Yeah.
So when you look at the success Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David are having in Europe, you know, then you start stripping it back to, you know, Atiba Hutchinson, even Kyle Larin and Junior Hoylett, you know, Scott Arfield to a certain extent. These are Canadians now that people go, oh, I know of that player. Oh, I know of them. But everyone's really excited about having Davies and David, because they're up for the golden player.
Boy? Yeah, golden boy. Yeah. Isco won it in 2012, I think.
Yeah. So they're up for that. I think what that has put a lot of big clubs is, oh, that is a well we should start fishing in. So when Arabin Pepple, that, you know, he's on the fringes here and he's still only 17 and ticks all these boxes, they're like, well, he could still play in our U18s for another 6 months. He can play in our U23. Before we even see him in the first team, we have time for him to develop every single day. And with us being on the edge of our season, that's 5 months, 6 months of accelerated growth he could have on a day-to-day basis there. So, you know, right now he's at Leicester City. I haven't got an update yet, but there's also Portuguese, German Bundesliga teams that are also sniffing around. So it will come down to the best environment for him.
Yeah, and
Great to hear.
Yeah, he does have lots of options on his side. Yeah, and it's great for like Canadian players just to have that EU passport, just to like make it's kind of like a stepping stone, I would say, just to make it easier to get to like a European team. I actually have one which is pretty cool. And now let's go to the rapid fire. And this is my favorite part of the show. And also people say that this is the psychology part of the show. I don't really see it, but let's go. So do you play FIFA?
Yes, I haven't recently because my son dominates the PlayStation. So I still think I can beat him, so I'm okay.
Okay. What's your five-a-side dream team?
Five-a-side dream team, is it current players or is it players?
It can be like past generation as well.
So I'm going to go with past generation because I think these were players I would have grown up watching. So for me, I would look at Neville Southall in goal because he was one of the best Everton goalkeepers. I would have Maldini at the back. I would have Gascoigne in midfield. I'll have the Brazilian Romario up top, and I'd have Ronaldinho in there. That'd be my five-a-side. I wouldn't even play. I would just coach it and watch. Come on, boys, let's play.
Yeah, that'd be a great team to
That's
coach.
Classic.
And if you could have lunch with anyone in the world, who would it be?
Lunch?
Yeah.
Outside of family, because my family, I don't get to see them enough. Dad's in England, mum's in Cyprus. So they would be two and they're not together, so I couldn't really have lunch together with them. I'd have to have two separate. So, and because I can't do that together, you've helped me find a different solution. I would Sir Alex Ferguson. I would love to just pick his brains. He has been one of the greatest, if not the greatest manager of my lifetime, of all time, and the way he ran a club from top to bottom, to installing local players coming through the system, to values with the kit man, to the CFO, evolving team after team. He would be my number one. Yeah,
and I actually have one quote that I really like from him. Like, attack wins you games, but defense wins you titles. I thought that was I just like that quote from him. And do you have a pet?
I do. I have two black British labs, female called Poppy and a male called Louis.
Oh,
yeah,
the dogs are so adorable.
Yeah, they are cute.
And what's your favorite fruit?
Favorite fruit? I think it's just something simple like apple, to slice an apple up and have it with a bit of cheese or on its own. I think that's probably my easiest go-to.
Yeah, I love apples too. And do you have a nickname?
Well, my real name is Thomas, but because my dad's Thomas and his dad before him was Thomas, I became Tom as a kid. I became Tommy Jr. I guess it's almost a nickname because it's not really my actual printed name. So yeah, Tommy Jr. is probably, or Tommy J, TJ, people sometimes call me. The players from time to time call me Gaffer. I've never been one for titles. You know, as long as they're free to use my name. I don't think your title makes your position. It's how you treat people.
Okay. And what is one superpower that you'd like to have?
Teleportation, 100%. And the reason being, I'd say, right, I'm going home for a bit. I'm home, or I'm going to see my mum in Cyprus, or you know what, I'm going to go watch the Everton game. right, I'm PI. I could have been in the bubble and out the bubble quickly. Teleportation. I think it saves on time. I don't have to travel on an airplane for 9 hours. I can be anywhere at any time. I'm back again. I can pop down if I forget to get eggs on the way home. I can pop down and get them. Teleportation, 100%.
Yeah, I think you're the second person who said teleportation. It's a popular one. Then
Who was the first?
And I'm pretty sure it was Chris Christofsky from the Down the Pub crew.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And what's your favorite thing to cook?
Oh, do you know what? I just made a great curry. It was a vegetarian curry on the weekend. I like, for me, a barbecue. I love a barbecue. I love cooking chicken. If you ask my family, they like it when I get my allspice out and do the chicken. I did it for the players when we were in PI, and they were like, "What season is it?" And I basically just see what spices I've got, put them all together. It's my allspice chicken. I love that. And then in the winter now, I love making curries. So I'd have to say, depending on the season, that would be where I go.
Okay. And what is one place that you'd like to visit?
I've always talked to my wife about going to the Maldives or the Seychelles. You know, for as busy as my life is and the family life, and I actually there's a backpacker in me that actually loves the chill. We've got a place in Sycamoose in BC in the shoe swap, and it's so quiet and it's just a great come down. I would love to be stuck on this blue sea, white sand in a beach hut in the middle of nowhere. That'd be paradise for me.
It does sound like paradise. And
no agents, right?
Yeah,
no agents have your number.
And what's your favorite movie or documentary?
I actually really enjoy either like I like documentary series. So I like, you know, these All or Nothings that are on Amazon Prime. So whether it's, you know, the New Zealand All Black one or the Man City one, or even, you know, the Dallas Cowboys, they tell me a story about how it's gone on. So I've really enjoyed them. In terms of movies for me are an escapism. It's a thing we have with the family. You know, I miss going to the movie theaters. I could say any of the Marvels. I just think they're brilliantly written. There's acting, there's comedy, there's action. I love Marvel movies.
Yeah, we only watched the first one in quarantines, but like, yeah, they've been good. I like the Spider-Mans and Black Panther.
Yeah, very good. And I tell you, the Black Panther one is even more powerful now in two ways. One, with society and awareness of Black culture, and the second one with the passing of Chad Boseman. I think that's huge.
Yeah, Black Panther is definitely a very powerful movie. And what are 3 words to define you?
Honest, funny, curious.
Okay, I like those. And if you could be doing anything other than coaching soccer, what would you be doing? I think I know the answer to this, but
coaching soccer. If I wasn't coaching soccer, I think maybe I'd do what you do and be a pundit on a show. I like talking football, so whether it be an analyst. If I wasn't coaching it, I think I'd be a teacher or phys ed, something that would help the next generation. There's something about helping people that I'm drawn to.
Yeah,
what did you think?
I thought you were gonna say play soccer. Since that was your original, that's what you were like, because I thought because you were playing soccer before, and
well, you know what they say, right? So those that can't play, coach. Those that can't coach, ref. Those that can't ref, well, let's leave it there.
Okay. Are you a good dancer?
Not bad, actually. Do you know what? I think my wife was impressed when we met. I think the best dance we've had was on our wedding. We got married in Maui, and we lit it up with some of our dance moves that even people were like, "Oh, do you guys take lessons?" And we don't. went with the rhythm and had a bit of fun. So I don't dance nearly enough. And my wife, every time we do, tells me, do you know I love to dance? I'm like, no, honey, you never tell me that. I think she's hinting to me to take her dancing more, but I think I can get by. Yeah.
Okay, and what are your goals for the future?
Goals for the future, I want to keep helping change the landscape of Canadian football. So in doing so, it's not about my words, my opinions. It's about my actions on how I help grow the game, to, you know, how I treat the players coming in, how I treat them leaving, how we perform on the pitch, to how we consistently compete for trophies. Yeah, I think that's definitely a goal. At one stage during my life, I would like to coach a national team, so I've got to make sure I find a pathway to get to that. You know, I know Harty's had his, you know, Canada and Trinidad and Tobago. I think for me, I would do that more in my experience, because I really enjoy the day-to-day business of players and games. And I'm not sure I would like to play 2 or 3 games and then have 3 months between, you know, the next time, or a month between the next time. And then maybe as I'm getting older, maybe go back to Europe and coach. But I love the life here. I see my life here. And if I'm a one club guy like Alex Ferguson became after his stint in Scotland, that's okay by me too. Just keep growing this league to be as big as, if not bigger than, the MLS or La Liga MX.
Yeah. And I would love to see you as like the coach of a national team. I think it'd be very fun to see Tommy Wheeldon Jr., head coach of a national team.
Latvia. Estonia.
Yeah, and that's my last rapid fire question, but I actually forgot to ask this, and this is one question that I really want to ask. You can just answer this with like one sentence. But why were Spain so dominant in their golden generation from 2008 to 2012? That's
They
why I
owned
fell
the
in love.
ball. They owned the ball, and they dictated the terms at a time when people were still fluent. They found a way. They had an incredible cycle of players coming through. They won early. They won at the U20 level as well, I believe, with that generation. And they had players in all positions, but what made them magic was they played to their DNA, and the Spanish DNA. They're very patient. You know, you think of, they have late lunches and siestas, late dinners, so their day's quite more relaxed than the hurry scurry of some European and North American cultures. They're bullfighters, so they like goading teams in, and they produced a team that fit their culture, fit the place they were playing. In 2010, it was in South Africa. They were able to play to that heat and tempo. And they had magic, you know, when you got your Iniestas and Xavis playing at that type of level, your Fernando Torreses there, and they had incredible leaders like Puyol and Casillas in goal. It was a terrific golden generation, and but most importantly, they owned the ball and dictated the terms. They won it on their terms.
Yeah, that's how I fell in love with soccer, watching like the Spain golden generation. But thank you, Ty, so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and just talking all about soccer with you. And we definitely learned so much about soccer and tactics. I was expecting to learn so much more about tactics, but you surpassed my expectations. So thank you, Tommy, so much for coming on. And
My pleasure.
we can't wait to see the Cavalry news coming out, whether it be transfers or like transfers, or the league starting up again soon, and watching you guys play again.
Perfect. Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
What's your ambition?
I want to play professional soccer. So I was supposed to go to a camp in Ajax, but because I fractured my patella, I wasn't able to. But I'm glad that my soccer academy here is like really loves like that possession. They take all their drills from like Barcelona and Ajax, and I just got accepted into the invite only so it's for the top players in the academy. You have to be 12, so I was just able to do it, so I'm really excited about that. We've only been doing it for 3 weeks.
Oh, so that's good. What position do you play?
I play as an inverted winger, so I cut in on my right, or as a cam.
That's good. So my advice to you is to be a footballer is the two things I told you. Right now, I haven't seen you play, but you've got an A+ attitude, so that's in your favor. Your job now is to, whatever level your ability is to make it better than everybody else in your team, in the age group above. And the only way you do it is the time you spent away from what your team does. I tell my son the same thing I tell all the youth soccer players. Some people listen, some don't, but it's what you do when nobody's around that really makes it, and make it relative. So if you are a winger, what move, dropping the shoulder, coming in on your right, makes you better? Can your dad bounce balls that are awkward to handle versus the easy roll-ins and then turn, right? You put yourself in a position of being uncomfortable, and that's how you're going to get better.
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. I'll definitely take that advice to heart. And I just want to thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and we definitely did get golden nuggets of advice in this interview.
Well, listen to it again. Maybe you might see more of them a chicken than they are golden. But if you get one of them, I'm a big believer in the stickies. Right? What makes things sticky and memorable, and they're the things that help you on your journey. And listen, I wish you, and I think your dad does a great job with you, and I think you're exciting for the future. So I hope it's on the field. But whether you become the next Elliot Simmons or Marco Bustos, or whether you become the next Terry Dunfield that's a TV pundit as well, I think the world is yours, boy.
Okay, thank you so much, Tommy. And we can't wait to watch you next season.
Thanks, mate. Well, hopefully we'll be out there in Halifax and I can meet you in person.
Yeah, I'd love to meet you in person too, and just talk with you more in person.
No worries.
Okay, see you.
I'll always have time. Take care. Look after each other.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Tommy.